This tree here is a white oak. You want to do a quick check. Make sure it's not opposite branching, because it does often resemble a silver or a red maple. But you can tell it's a white oak by all of these very long vertical striations. And also the bark is sort of a lighter silvery color compared to a lot of the trees out here. And also on the old ones, you'll get these sort of patches of missing bark all over the trunk. And once again, if you look around, you'll find these sort of leaves all over the place. And they've got these very rounded lobes. Very characteristic of a white oak. Well, this tree here is an American sycamore. Really easy to tell in the winter. It's got this very distinguishable camouflage pattern bark with these greens and browns. A lot of times what you'll see though is very white, smooth bark. You can often spot this from, very far away, and you'll find a lot of these along rivers and other bodies of water, just a bunch of white trunks lining the forest line. Towards the base of the trunk, you get more brown, flaky bark. It's a lot of little flakes. But the main characteristic is the white bark. That's really all you need to know. This is a pretty good example of a honey locust. As you can see, it's got these sort of big plates of bark just flaking off of the main trunk. This is just covered in these thorns that are very distinctive of the honey locust. Now again, there's domesticated versions of this that don't have any thorns at all, but if you ever see those, you know it's a honey locust. I imagine you could make a pretty good spear or something out of those. One more thing is that in the early fall, just as the seed pods are starting to ripen, you can sort of open them up and eat the pulp inside, and apparently they have a sort of sweet taste. It's not the greatest wild food, but it's something. This tree here is black walnut. Its bark is medium darkness compared to most of the other trees, so if you're just walking through the forest, it's not too tough to spot. The other giveaway is its bark. You can see there's these very chunky sort of ridges on it, and it's got these deep furrows in it as well. Now, another thing to check for, in case you're not sure, is the bark. If you cut away a piece, it'll have a sort of dark chocolatey colored interior in the bark. Now of course you can eat the nuts off of this tree. It is a walnut tree. But the green husk can be taken off of it and sort of soaked in water to create a black dye for cloth or any other sort of thing. Not too far from that walnut is this, which is hackberry. It's got a super distinctive bark. You can see it's got all these sort of warty things on it. Very warty texture. Now, another way to identify this and to sort of tell it from something like an elm, which you could get it confused with, is up there. The twigs often have a very delicate look to them, and they have a lot of sort of zigzag patterns in them. And sometimes you'll find what's called a witch's broom, which is just a big clump of twigs that's caused by a fungal infection. Now, one thing about this tree is that the berries are actually edible, but I don't see any out right now. You can probably find them earlier in the fall season. This here is an Osage Orange tree, and you can tell it is because it's got these sort of crisscrossing diamond patterns Very similar to an ash in a way, but this looks a lot more splintery or gnarly. You'll see a chunk of bark that'll just split off into another piece. Another giveaway is that underneath the bark you have this sort of peachy orange color, very characteristic of this tree. Also, a lot of times you'll find trees that are not nearly this straight. You'll find ones that are all bent over and very good bow wood. Now a lot of times you'll find the actual Osage oranges lying on the ground. Obviously it's snowy right now and a lot of them have probably rotted away or something like that. Now I don't think those are actually particularly useful. I've heard that they work as an insect repellent, but this is pretty disputed and there's not much evidence that actually proves this. And they're certainly not edible. But again, very good bow wood. Wow. You know, I've taught you a little bit about identifying trees in the winter. And I think identifying things is important. I think it helps you appreciate being in nature more. Because on one hand, you learn just how many uses there are for things. On the other hand, I don't think you need to know how to identify stuff to appreciate nature. Not at all. I loved nature on a deep level long before I understood how to identify trees or before I knew some of these edible plants. And of course I've got a lot to learn. So if you're walking in the forest, I don't want you to feel frustrated that you can't tell what tree is what or what plant does what. Instead, keep an eye out for all the beautiful things. Look at the birds flying around, the ducks and the geese migrating, and this beautiful frozen stream with its contours and curves. It's breathtaking.